I'm Jenny Robertson, founder of the On Purpose Woman Global Community and founder and publisher of On Purpose Woman magazine. I'm excited to share with you the speaker portion of our Connections Over Coffee gathering of the On Purpose Woman Global Community. Today, Vicki Ibaugh is speaking on Find Your Business Bottleneck, how to use the ACDC framework to get into flow. Vicki is the founder of Know You to Grow You Business Coaching. She's a certified coach, Kolbe consultant, and Clockwork Partner. Vicki's favorite commodity is time, and she's committed to showing women entrepreneurs how to align, streamline, and optimize their businesses so they have more time, joy, and fun. You can find out more at Vicki's website, knowyoutogrowyou.com. Vicki, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, and thank you so much. And we had such a great discussion. I am going to go ahead and share my screen because as a visual learner, I believe in having some visual clues as to what we're talking about, as well as some of the stuff today would not make any sense if I didn't have a visual to show you. So I'm Vicki Ibaugh. I run Know You to Grow You Business Coaching. I am also a certified partner with Clockwork, and Clockwork is all about running businesses essentially very efficiently. Strip away what is not necessary and get things running like clockwork so that actually things can run even when you step away from your business. And so the tool I'm sharing here today comes from their work, and they have blessed me to share it with you. And I'm going to put my own unique twist on it because that's just what I do. I like to innovate other people's things and give it my own twist. So let's talk about this because you could probably all relate to this. You've probably been stuck in a traffic jam. And then you get up there and you find out it's because 4 lanes is going down to 1 and there's a bottleneck in the flow. And this happens in your business. Sometimes everything's just moving along just fine. And then all of a sudden there's this slowdown that frustrates you. And you're just like, oh, if I could just get past this, everything would be fine. And the reality is our businesses are going to have bottlenecks periodically. Sometimes different ones at different times. They're just going to happen, just like bottlenecks in traffic. However, unlike traffic, we can actually influence this and open some lanes up so that things get back into flow. And so what we're going to talk about is the 4 key places in a business that you'll experience bottleneck. And this is where ACDC comes in. And so those 4 bottlenecks relate to 4 things that are true of every business. Every business must attract potential clients. If you don't have potential clients, you probably don't have a business. Conversion. Those potential clients need to become paying clients. They need to sign up for what it is you're offering them. You then need to do the delivery. You need to deliver the product, the service, whatever it is you promise them, you need to be able to deliver that. And somewhere along this line, you need to collect some cash, because without that, your business won't really be sustainable. And so these are the 4 key areas. And I went ahead, and for the people who are actually in the networking meeting, you already have access to the handout. But I just want to have you realize you don't need to write down everything I'm saying. There is a handout that covers all of this that you can get, including all the different pieces that help you to identify your bottleneck. So I don't want you to get lost in writing notes, and instead just kind of lean into what we're talking about here today. So this is just an easy example of when everything is in flow, all the pieces of your business are working in sequence and there isn't a slowdown. But you get one bottleneck, and sometimes that bottleneck starts causing other bottlenecks. So it's entirely possible you could have multiple bottlenecks. Typically, if you have a bottleneck in any of the first 3, attract, convert, or deliver, you will ultimately end up with a collection or a cash flow bottleneck. They just go together. And we're going to talk about at the very end today, how do you decide if you have multiple ones, which one to fix first? But first, let's talk about how do you figure out which ones you have. Now, it went ACDC, but we're actually going to talk about conversion first. And it's because there is a particular calculation from here we need in order to figure out if we have an attraction bottleneck. So we're going to start here. And conversion in its simplest form is just the number of people who purchase your offer, the number of people who buy from you. You say, I have this to offer, they hand you money. And to calculate your conversion rate, and I know some of you are probably already going, oh, math, like I don't do numbers, math is not my friend. I kept this math so simple for you. I got it down to the basics. If you have a calculator and know where the division button is, you can calculate these. It's that simple. So what you need to know is how many people purchased from you and how many people did you make that offer to? And you take the number who purchased and you divide by the number who saw the offer, and that's your conversion rate. It's that simple. So let's look at some examples. There are lots of different ways that you might communicate your offer to people. And so we're going to pretend these are 5 separate people here that have 5 different methods for making an offer. So there's the person who used email. And now with email, one little caveat. It's not the number of people on your list. It's the number of people who opened the email. Because remember, it's who saw it, who saw the offer. So if they didn't even see the offer, they don't count in your numbers. So this person had 100 people open their email and 4 people bought. So 4 divided by 100 is 4%. That's the conversion rate. Speaking. This person spoke to a group of 20 people. 5 people bought their offer. They have a 25% conversion rate. 5 divided by 20 is 25. Sales calls. This person made 5 sales calls. 1 person bought. Their conversion rate's 20%. Webinars. Webinars actually have a slightly different rate. They're separate from speaking engagements, so I'm going to keep them separate here. 30 people came to the webinar, 5 bought, 16.7. We're going to make that 17, just round it up. Social media, whether this is an ad or just a promoted post, 500 people saw this person's post, 10 people bought, that's a 2%. Now at this point you're going, well, you know what? The speaking engagement's the best one because they have 25%. Well, it depends on what your method is and what works best for you. Different people have different methods that they want to use. So what we need to know is, well, what's the average? Like what is kind of your industry average for this to know whether what you're doing is working or not working? So in general, these are industry averages. For your industry, you may need to check these for yourself. This is from the research I did. Email typical conversion rate, 1 to 3%. Social media, 2 to 5. Speaking, 10 to 25. Webinars, 15. Sales calls, 30 to 50. So those are the averages out there in the industries. So if we go back and look at these and the conversion rates compared to the average, all the ones in green are converting at or above average. The person with the one-on-one sales calls, well, they're a little bit below average. So when we look at that, what we can say is if they are above or within the average, it's not a conversion issue. They're operating at the industry average. If they're below average, then there might be a conversion bottleneck. There might be some room for improvement here. So things to track. This is a great thing to start knowing your numbers and tracking some things. Track the number of people who are seeing your offer invites. Track the number of people who are buying, because now you know your conversion rate and you'll know whether you have a conversion bottleneck or not. Now, this may require that you do a little bit of research to know, well, what is the conversion rate on average for my particular method and industry? But once you know that, you'll know like, hey, I did great. So Sherry and I worked through this, and I hope it's okay that I'm sharing this, Sherry. And she actually came into our conversation convinced she had a conversion bottleneck. And in fact, in all 3 methods she was using, she was converting above average. It wasn't a conversion bottleneck at all. But she might have focused on this when really her time could have been spent better somewhere else. So let's go back to the A and the ACDC, attraction, which is the number of leads you need to reach your revenue goal. And this depends on a couple things. The first one is, what's your revenue goal? And then we divide that by the amount of money the product is that you're selling. And that will vary. And I know some of you sell multiple things. So what you want to look at is for that particular product, what's your revenue goal? And that will let you know then how many sales you need to make to reach that goal. So we're just going to play with some numbers here. We're going to pretend it's for a quarter. So the revenue goal for the quarter is $10,000. The product is 500. So this person's going to need 20 sales. Simple math, really simple. Now, this is where we need to know that conversion rate. So you take the number of sales, you divide that by your conversion rate, and that tells you how many leads you're going to need. So now you can actually calculate, well, how many people do I need to have see this offer in order to get to that sales number? So if we look at this and we take those same 5 people from before and we look at the number, they all need 20 sales. They all have the same sales goal. The person with email is going to need 500 leads over the quarter. The speaking person's going to need 80 leads. The salesperson's going to need 100 one-on-one calls. Can you see why working on that conversion rate might be helpful? They're going to need fewer leads if they improve their conversion rate to at least the industry average. The webinar person is going to need 120 people to attend their webinar, and the social media person is going to need for 1,000 people to see their promotion or their ad. I'm going to flip over here to my bottleneck assessment. This is a little tool I use behind the scenes when I'm working with clients. So if we go down here to the subtraction piece, and remember the average conversion rate for one-on-one sales calls is 30 to 50. So let's see what would happen if this particular person fixed their conversion rate instead of focusing on the number of leads they needed. If we made it just 30, they now only need 67 calls. If we get them to 40, 50 calls. If they really get their conversions doing well and they get to 50, now they only need to talk to 40 people. This is why really paying attention to what is your bottleneck and working on the right one could be helpful. Because if they were focusing on just attracting more people and they're converting at a low rate, below average, they're going to have to do way more work. That's not very efficient. So with this one, the question you ask yourself is, okay, if I know how many sales I need and I know how many leads I need, do I have enough leads? If you don't, you have an attraction bottleneck, and then that would be an area to explore. If you have enough leads, guess what? Well, that's not your bottleneck. So you don't need to worry about attracting more people necessarily, unless your sales goal changes and you do need more leads. So as your goals change, different bottlenecks could emerge. Now let's talk about delivery. And this came up in a few discussions during our breakout room in the networking group. And this is about looking at your capacity and the quality. It's both of those. And so this is no math. Guess what? We don't have to do any more math. Math is done. AC takes care of the math. Now we're just in questions. Do you have a waiting list? Like, I know when I was going through different coaching programs, they were like, oh, you need to aspire to have a waiting list. Well, waiting list is actually a sign of a delivery bottleneck because you don't have the capacity to serve more people. You have a bottleneck there. People are having to wait in line. If you have products that you sell, if there's a long leg between when somebody places an order and you deliver it, you have a delivery bottleneck. I once ordered an anniversary gift 2 months in advance thinking I was like, oh, look at me, like I'm working ahead. The company told me it was going to take 4 months to get the product. They have a delivery bottleneck. It should not take 4 months for me to get a product. So that could be a delivery product. If your service is suffering because you're spread too thin, you're serving too many people, you have a delivery bottleneck. Or if when you look at that sales number, the number of people you would need in order to reach your revenue goal, you're like, ooh, like that would spread me a little too thin, then you have a delivery bottleneck. So if you answered no to all those questions, you don't have a delivery bottleneck. You're good. You have capacity, you have quality, those are in place. If you answered yes to any one of those, there's a delivery bottleneck. because you could make more, but you lack time availability or resources. And this is where sometimes getting some additional help so that you can be freed up to stay in your zone of genius and do the things that only you can do is really impactful in clearing your delivery bottleneck. Because, you know, when I look at all the stuff that happens in the on-purpose woman community, if Ginny didn't have some people doing some things behind the scenes, she would probably have to offer fewer things. She would have a delivery bottleneck. But instead, she has people who handle certain things so that she can show up and be brilliant when she's here and focus on her zone of genius. So we all sometimes need to get some help if we've reached the point where service is suffering or we can't serve any more people. And so if you have one of these, it's about exploring, like, what's causing this? How could I increase my capacity? How could I produce products quicker? How can I put things in place that improve the quality of service while I'm still reaching these goals of serving the number of people that I want to and having the impact I want to? And our last bottleneck is collection and cash flow, because without cash in your business will eventually cease to exist. There's only so much you can personally pour into your business before you just go, you know what, I'm done with this. Like, I'm not going to do this anymore. So 2 questions to ask here. Again, no more math. Do you have enough cash to fix your bottleneck? Because fixing some of those bottlenecks sometimes requires you to pay somebody else, maybe to get some training, to get some support, to hire a specialist to help you with certain things. So you ask yourself, do I have the cash in my business to fix that other bottleneck? If not, you have a cash flow bottleneck. If you have past due invoices and payments from clients, you have a collection bottleneck. I had a client at one point who they were 3 invoices behind on paying me. It was impacting my business to have that money not collected. My husband had a similar circumstance only in his business because he has employees. He wasn't going to be able to make payroll if these people who he had already delivered to didn't pay him back. And so somebody had to get on the phone and go, hello, we have already delivered. We would like our payment. And so sometimes fixing that cash flow bottleneck involves knowing your numbers. You have to kind of know where you have past due payments, or knowing, like, do I have money to pay for certain things? This is where, you know, one of your helpers could be a bookkeeper or some sort of tool where you actually know what your cash flow looks like. You know, your profit and loss statement. I know for years I was not good at knowing mine. I now have identified that I used to have a cash flow bottleneck. So I fixed that by getting really good at knowing my numbers and knowing where I am with stuff. So once you kind of know what's causing the issue, you can start to resolve it. Sometimes it's you need to charge more. Sometimes it's you need to call people up and say, listen, like, your credit card expired and you haven't paid me for the last 3 months if they're paying on a monthly basis. And so those can all be aspects of having a collection or cash flow bottleneck. So sometimes, remember, I said you're going to have more than one. Sometimes you're only going to have one, and that's actually great because you can just go, oh, I know which one it is. I'm going to work on fixing that one. When you have multiples, sometimes you have to figure out what's the most important one to solve. So I'm going to give you an example of this. So I had a client who they thought they had a collection bottleneck, which they did. They were lacking in cash, but the cause of their cash flow was actually a delivery bottleneck. Their business model was they got paid after they delivered a product or a service. And they weren't delivering in a timely fashion, which meant they weren't getting paid in a timely fashion. And it really came back to their staff not prioritizing things that were billable work that they get paid for by clients. And so we had to go in and kind of fix the delivery bottleneck, which took care of the collection bottleneck, which then allowed them to now attract and convert more clients and smooth out their business, so that now they have enough work that's getting done in a timely fashion and they're making profit. And so sometimes it takes, like, really looking at it and getting under the hood and getting curious to go, what's affecting what. But we start with figuring out which ones do we have, which boxes do we check as yes, and then from there we can figure out, okay, where do I want to look first? Because if you try to solve too many at the same time, you're spreading your resources too thin. So much better to figure out, well, what's the one linchpin? Like with that client, once we fixed the delivery part, the rest of it kind of adjusted itself. We needed to find what was the one most important thing to focus on first, and then the other stuff started to take care of itself so that it wasn't as big of a bottleneck as it could have been. So we've covered a lot today, and I promised the group that I would have a handout for you that summarizes all of this. And so the way that you kind of go through this, my recommendation, especially as we're heading into the end of the year here, we're heading into the final 4.5 months of the year, is to sit down and really look at your business, to run through these numbers and figure out if you have a bottleneck, and then take time to focus on that one bottleneck and the actions you can take to fix that, because that's going to set your year up to end really well as it's going to set you up to start your next year really well. And this is not a one and done thing. This is a process you're going to repeat over and over and over again. So most of my small business clients, we look at this at least every 90 days as part of their quarterly assessment to see what's going on. And then to decide, is there a bottleneck and what one do we want to fix? So you can get the handout at knowyoutogrowyou.com/find. And I can't wait to hear from you, like what you find out and how you fix it and how that transforms your business. So thank you all. I so appreciate you all for being here. And we're going to wrap things up, and I will answer some questions over in the networking group. If you have questions and you're watching this through the stream, just leave the question in the comments and I'll circle back and answer your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vicki. Wow. You know, you've spoken for us quite a few times, and I always say that you always over deliver. So that was so much good information in a really compacted bit of time, but you made it sound pretty, it was pretty easy, not to do necessarily, but to at least understand. So to put the work in to do it. And I want to thank you for that so much. And I want to ask everybody who's with us here on Zoom to unmute yourselves, and let's give Vicki some applause and some yays to thank her for this amazing presentation. You all ready? Let's go. Woo! So thank you. And I want to thank anyone who's watching this live video or the replay on our YouTube channel. Please check out all the other women on our channel who share their gifts, their wisdom, and their expertise to inspire you to move forward, whether it's about your business or other parts of your life. If you want to join us for one of our Zoom gatherings or an in-person meeting, go to my website, opwgc.com. We can find out all about our community and the magazine. And be sure you do check out Vicki's free offer, knowyoutogrowyou.com/find. That is also in the text of this video. Thanks for watching.